I had just finished a 12-hour shift at the firehouse and was looking forward to nothing more than kicking off my boots and watching the game with a cold one. My name's Archer Zane, and I've lived in this neighborhood for 5 years without incident until the HOA got a new president. Her name: Harmony Pritchard. 50-something, platinum blonde, yappy little dog, and a voice that could shatter glass. The kind of woman who thinks her clipboard gives her divine authority. My truck, a cherry red, fully restored '87 Silverado, was parked inside my own garage, like it always is when I'm home. I had just shut the garage door behind me when I heard the unmistakable rattle of a tow truck outside. At first I thought it was for someone parked on the street. But then I heard heavy boots walking up my driveway. Curious, I opened the side door of the garage and stepped out. That's when I saw 2 guys with reflective vests standing next to my garage. One of them had a crowbar in his hand, eyeing the door like it was supposed to pop open for him. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I asked, stepping out fully. The taller guy flinched. "We got a work order to tow a red pickup truck. Said it was in violation of HOA rules." "In my garage?" I asked, crossing my arms. That's when she strutted up. Harmony Pritchard herself, heels clicking, dog yapping, sunglasses perched on her forehead like she was about to give a TED talk on suburban oppression. "You were warned, Mr. Zane," she said smugly. "Commercial vehicles are not allowed to be stored on residential property." "It's not a commercial vehicle," I snapped. "It's my personal truck. I use it to get to work. It's registered, insured, and parked in my own damn garage." She waved her clipboard like it was a police badge. "We've had complaints. It's an eyesore." "From who? The garbage can across the street?" I asked. Harmony raised her chin. "We're authorized to enforce community standards. You refuse to comply, so we're removing the violation." "In my garage," I repeated, louder this time. I stepped back inside and hit the lock on the garage's deadbolt. Then I grabbed my phone and dialed the sheriff. The tow guys looked at each other and started backing off when they saw I wasn't bluffing. "You just tried to break into my property," I told Harmony. "That's breaking and entering." "Oh, please," she scoffed. "You're being dramatic." The sheriff arrived 10 minutes later, lights flashing, and I've never been so damn relieved to see those red and blues. I walked out to meet him. "Deputy, I've got 2 witnesses here who tried to break into my garage under the orders of this woman," I said, pointing to Harmony. "They came to tow my truck from inside my garage." The deputy looked at Harmony. "Is that true, ma'am?" She straightened her blouse like she was at a garden party. "We have the right to enforce HOA rules, not by forcing entry into someone's private garage, you don't." The deputy cut her off. "That's trespassing. Possibly attempted burglary, depending on intent." Harmony's face drained of color. I turned to the deputy. "You want to see the security footage? I've got cameras inside and outside." His eyes lit up. "Let's take a look." The deputy followed me into the garage, where I pulled up the footage on a mounted monitor just above my tool bench. The inside camera had gotten a perfect shot of the guy with the crowbar stepping onto the side platform and testing the handle. The outside camera, mounted above the eaves, had captured Harmony directing the 2 men toward the garage like she was choreographing a ballet of stupidity. The deputy watched the footage with arms folded and his jaw tightening the longer it played. "This guy's about 1 pound of pressure away from breaking and entering," he muttered. I paused the video and pointed to the timestamp. "That's exactly when I came out. I interrupted it before he could do anything worse." He nodded. "Good thing you did." This is strong enough for a criminal mischief charge at minimum. If he had actually forced entry, we'd be talking felony. We stepped back outside, where Harmony was now arguing with the tow truck driver, clearly trying to redirect blame. "So now you're saying you had nothing to do with it?" the deputy asked her as we approached. I only asked them to check if the vehicle was accessible," she stammered, eyes darting. "I never authorized illegal entry." "Ma'am, the video shows you gesturing directly toward the garage door and nodding when one of the men asked about opening it," he said flatly. That contradicts your statement. She crossed her arms, mouth pressed in a tight line. I was under the impression that the HOA has access rights under the community charter. You don't, I said. There's no clause in the CC and Articus that gives you rights to private enclosed spaces. The deputy looked back at me. You have a copy of that charter, printed and highlighted, I said. Want to see it? His eyes flicked over to Harmony. Actually, I'd like to see hers. Harmony opened her leather portfolio and handed over a stapled packet. The deputy thumbed through it, stopping at a dog-eared page near the middle. This section here, he said, tapping the page. It says the HOA can issue citations for visible violations. This vehicle wasn't visible. You knew it was stored inside. That's a huge overreach. Harmony's face flushed a blotchy red. The deputy looked at the tow driver. You two are free to go. I'll be contacting your company about this incident. You were misled. The driver gave Harmony a dark look before climbing back into the cab. They pulled out of the driveway and disappeared down the street. As soon as they were gone, the deputy straightened. Mr. Zane, I'd like to file a formal report on this. If you're willing, we can proceed with pressing charges for attempted unlawful entry and misuse of authority. Absolutely, I said, Harmony's voice cracked. You're actually going to let this man criminalize a community volunteer over a parking issue? The deputy's tone stayed even. This wasn't a parking issue. This was an attempted breach of private property under false pretenses. That's not a gray area. Her dog barked once, as if on cue. She yanked at the leash and stormed back toward her house. The deputy turned toward me. You'll need to stop by the station tomorrow to sign the official complaint. We'll also need to preserve that footage. Already backed up to a thumb drive, I said. And I've got cloud storage, he smiled. You came prepared. I watched Harmony disappear around the corner of the sidewalk, her heels catching on the uneven pavement. You have no idea. The next morning, I took the footage and documentation to the sheriff's office. They already had a file open on Harmony. Apparently, I wasn't the first homeowner she'd pushed too far. A couple down the street had filed a noise complaint after she installed motion-triggered alarms aimed at their flower beds. Another resident said she had tried to fine them for having improperly shaped bushes. The detective handling the file, Officer Langley, asked me to leave my thumb drive so they could duplicate the footage. He confirmed they'd be forwarding the case to the county prosecutor. Depending on how it shakes out, there could be a hearing, he said. You'd be asked to testify. Happy to, I replied. 3 days later, a notice was posted on the HOA bulletin board. Harmony Pritchard was temporarily suspended from her duties pending an internal review. The rest of the board tried to keep it quiet, but word spread fast. I started getting nods from neighbors I'd barely spoken to before. A few of them even brought over beer. One evening, as I was working on the Silverado's brakes, a man named Theo from 3 houses down stopped by. He was in his 60s, wore a Vietnam vet cap and carried a manila folder. You're Archer, right? He asked. Yeah, what's up? He looked around, then handed me the folder. Used to be on the HOA board. Resigned 2 years ago after Harmony steamrolled a vote about surveillance cameras. That folder's got meeting minutes and emails she never thought anyone kept. I opened it. Inside were printed emails showing Harmony pushing through fines without full board votes, using HOA funds for decorative improvements to her own property, and even rerouting irrigation lines to favor her backyard garden. This is gold, I muttered. Theo grinned. It's more than that. It's leverage. That night, I scanned the documents and sent them to Officer Langley. I also made digital copies and stashed backups in cloud storage. There was enough in those pages to launch a full audit of the HOA's finances and voting procedures. Within a week, the board called a special meeting. It was held in the community clubhouse, and for once, every chair was filled. Residents who had never shown up before were standing along the back wall. Word had spread Harmony might finally be out for good. The board president, A meek guy named Jalen, who had clearly been railroaded into his position, opened the meeting. "We're here to discuss recent incidents involving board member Harmony Pritchard," he said. "Due to new information brought forward by residents and the sheriff's office, we will be voting on her removal tonight." Harmony stood in the corner, arms folded, eyes blazing. She didn't even try to defend herself until the vote was already underway. "This is a witch hunt," she snapped. "You're letting a man with a rust bucket truck dictate policy." From the back of the room, someone shouted, "At least he didn't try to break into anyone's house." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Jalen held up a hand. "All in favor of removal." Every single hand went up. The next day, I received a notice in my mailbox. Harmony was officially removed from the HOA board. Not suspended, removed. A new election would be held in 30 days, but that wasn't the end of it. Officer Langley called the same afternoon. The county prosecutor had reviewed the footage and documentation. Harmony was being charged with criminal trespass and attempted unlawful entry. There would be a court date. "We'll need you to testify," he said. "She's still denying everything." I agreed without hesitation. At the hearing, Harmony showed up in a beige suit 2 sizes too tight and tried to argue that she had been misinformed and misled by the bylaws. The judge wasn't buying it, especially not after seeing the footage. After reviewing the evidence and hearing my testimony, the judge delivered the verdict, guilty on both counts. She was fined heavily and sentenced to community service. Her HOA privileges were permanently revoked. As I left the courthouse, a news van pulled up. Apparently, someone had tipped off the local station. A reporter asked if I had a comment. I looked straight into the camera. "Don't mess with people who know how to read the fine print." The segment aired that night. My phone blew up with messages from people in other neighborhoods, thanking me for standing up to the kind of power trip that too many HOAs get away with. I didn't start this to make a name for myself. I just wanted to protect my property. But if exposing a corrupt board member helps others do the same, I'll take that win any day. 3 weeks after the courthouse hearing, the neighborhood felt like it had taken a long breath and exhaled. With Harmony Pritchard out of power, the new interim board had started a review of all her previous citations and fines. It turned out, a few dozen homeowners had been hit with penalties that didn't appear in the official HOA violation ledger. Most of them had just paid the amounts to avoid further trouble. Now they were demanding answers. I hadn't planned on getting involved again. I figured I'd done my part. But one evening while I was rewiring the overhead lights in my garage, Theo showed up again, this time with someone I hadn't met. "Archer, this is Leela," he said. "She's a forensic accountant." Leela was sharp-eyed, mid-30s, and carried a laptop bag that looked heavier than it should have been. She wasted no time. "I've been reviewing the HOA's quarterly budgets for the last 2 years," she said. "There are dozens of inconsistencies. Thousands of dollars listed as general maintenance with no contractor names or invoices attached. Even more listed under community beautification but no actual projects to match." I set the pliers down. "Where was the money going?" "That's the thing," she said, opening her laptop and spinning it toward me. "See this entry? $22,000 for irrigation expansion, but the sprinkler systems haven't been touched in at least 3 years. And this one $1,800 for public tree trimming in winter. In this region, that's not even a scheduled service." Theo stepped in. "We think Harmony was funneling funds into personal improvements, possibly even fake vendor accounts." "Who's on the account access list?" I asked. Leela pulled up another document. Harmony, of course, and 2 other board members, Marcus Blaine and Sheila Kent, both of them approved every disbursement. I leaned back against the workbench. "Let me guess." "Neither of them showed up at the last vote." "They called in family emergencies," Theo said. I nodded once, then grabbed my phone. "We need to bring this to Langley." The next afternoon, I met Officer Langley in his office at the Sheriff's Department. Leela and Theo came with me. We showed him everything: email trails, bank statements, even scanned copies of reimbursement forms with identical handwriting across multiple signatures. Langley skimmed through the files, his brow furrowing. This is starting to look like embezzlement. If she forged vendor records, submitted false reimbursements, and rubber-stamped them with complicit board members, we're looking at a full criminal fraud case. Theo folded his arms. Can the department subpoena HOA financials? Langley nodded. With this much preliminary evidence, absolutely. I'll get it through the county investigator. If this checks out, we'll be talking about felony charges. 2 days later, the county sent a full audit team to the HOA treasurer's office. Sheila Kent refused to cooperate at first, claiming she didn't have the files. But when the auditors showed her the warrant, she folded fast and gave up access to the cloud storage account. That's when it exploded. Almost $70,000 had been moved over 18 months into a private vendor account registered under a fake landscaping company, Green Ridge Solutions. The address listed was a P.O. box. The contact number was disconnected. The tax ID had never been validated, and the payments. All authorized by Harmony, with Marcus and Sheila as co-signers. The county filed charges within the week. Conspiracy to commit fraud, misappropriation of community funds, falsifying financial records, and use of a false identity for financial gain. They arrested Harmony at her house the following Monday. No warning, no knock, just 2 unmarked cars and a warrant. According to Langley, she tried to claim it was a mistake that she'd trusted the wrong people and delegated too much. But the forensic trail was too clean, too deliberate. She'd written herself dozens of checks under the fake vendor name, even signed for deliveries of non-existent materials. I figured that would be the end of it. But then something else came up, something even worse. Theo called me 2 days after the arrest. "You need to see this," he said. Now, I met him at the community clubhouse. Leela was already there, flipping through a binder marked Security Initiative Phase 3. It was a proposal, dated 6 months back, with Harmony's signature. The document outlined a plan to install hidden audio surveillance inside select homes in the neighborhood, under the pretense of monitoring for structural issues related to soil shifting. But the equipment listed wasn't seismic, it was directional microphones and RF receivers. Leela pointed to a receipt. She ordered 3 of these devices using HOA funds. They're not even legal for private use in this state. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Did she actually install them? We're not sure, Theo said. But 2 families on this list recently had contractors do HVAC work. Both said they didn't request it. Just let the workers in because they said it was routine HOA inspection. That night, I checked my own vents. Nothing there, but I wasn't taking chances. I called Langley again. The next morning, he brought in a tech team from the state's Department of Justice. They found 1 device installed behind a vent cover in the master bedroom of a couple who had been fined repeatedly for late-night disruptions. The couple had no idea. The device had a SIM card and a battery pack, and it had been transmitting data. Real time. That changed everything. Harmony's charges now included illegal surveillance, invasion of privacy, and wiretapping. The DOJ took over the case. Her bail was revoked. Marcus and Sheila were both brought in for questioning, and it didn't take long for Marcus to flip. He confessed to installing the devices in exchange for immunity and protection. The neighborhood was stunned. What started as a petty overreach into where I parked my truck had spiraled into a full-scale scandal with state-level charges. A town hall was scheduled. The entire community showed up. This time, not a single board member stood behind the podium. Instead, a representative from the county stood up and addressed the crowd. Effective immediately, the current HOA board is dissolved. A temporary oversight committee made up of volunteer residents and an appointed legal liaison will manage operations until a new, legally compliant board is elected. There was a pause, then a small ripple of applause, then more, then the whole room. I didn't volunteer for the new board. I didn't want the job, but I did help draft a new set of bylaws with language that made it impossible for anyone to have unchecked authority again. Leela and Theo helped write the financial transparency clauses. The couple whose home had been bugged asked to create a neighborhood privacy policy, which passed unanimously. As for Harmony, her trial date was set for 3 months out. The charges were stacking. She'd pled not guilty, but the state had a mountain of digital evidence, testimony from Marcus and the surveillance device itself. Langley called me a week after the town hall. "You know," he said, "I've been in law enforcement for 15 years. Never thought I'd see a wiretap case come out of a suburban HOA. Me neither," I said. "But I guess she picked the wrong garage to mess with," he laughed. "You ever think about running for city council?" "Not a chance," I said. "I've got enough to deal with keeping my truck in my own garage." But when I stepped outside that evening, I noticed something new: neighbors chatting across driveways, kids riding scooters along the sidewalk, porch lights on and windows open. People weren't afraid anymore. And that, I figured, was worth all the trouble. The week leading up to Harmony Pritchard's trial, the neighborhood pulsed with a strange kind of energy, equal parts disbelief and anticipation. People who'd once kept their heads down now traded updates at mailboxes and swapped court documents over backyard fences. The HOA board's implosion had pulled back a curtain none of us realized was even there, and what we'd seen behind it changed the entire dynamic of the community. I was back on shift rotation at the firehouse, but on my days off, I helped the new oversight committee comb through the remnants of Harmony's paperwork. The deeper we dug, the uglier it got. One morning, I met with Leela and Theo in the temporary office the county had set up in the old pool maintenance room, now converted into a record storage area. No frills, just folding tables stacked with banker boxes and a faint smell of chlorine clinging to the walls. Leela pushed a file across the table toward me. Her expression was tighter than usual. She didn't waste time. "They found something else," she said. "Buried in the quarterly reports, a fund transfer for emergency pest control last spring. Over $8,000. "Let me guess," I said, flipping open the folder. "No contractor, no invoice, no service record." She reached into her laptop bag and pulled out a photograph. It showed a fenced-in corner of the community park, recently reseeded with grass. A small metal sign stuck in the ground read, "Hazardous area, do not enter." "They fenced this off for 6 weeks, she said. Claimed it was due to an ant infestation, but I spoke with the city's environmental department. They never issued any permits for pesticide use. The area wasn't even tested." Theo leaned forward. "You know what was under that section of land before she had it covered?" I looked from one to the other. "No, a flood retention pit," he said. "It was dry most of the year, but deep enough to hold runoff during heavy rains. It was there when the neighborhood was built, part of the original drainage plans." Leela pulled up a satellite map on her tablet. She had it filled in, illegally, and rerouted the runoff into a newly dug trench that leads guess where. The cursor circled around until it rested over a long, narrow trench that terminated behind Harmony's property line. "She diverted the flood path to boost her backyard's square footage," Leela said. "Which means if we get a real storm, the rest of the lower properties will flood." Theo nodded grimly. "Including yours." I ran a hand down my face. "That's not just shady, that's a public safety hazard." "We filed it with the city this morning," Leila said. "They're sending inspectors. If the trench destabilized the foundation of any nearby homes, they'll have to evacuate residents and file a civil engineering complaint," Theo finished. Before I could respond, Leila's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then stood. "They're here," she said. "State investigators just arrived at Harmony's house." We didn't drive, walked the 5 blocks in silence, our boots crunching on the sidewalk. By the time we rounded the bend, 2 black SUVs were already parked outside her beige stucco monstrosity. Men in windbreakers were unloading equipment while Harmony stood on her front porch, arms wrapped around herself. a tight-lipped woman beside her in a tailored blazer, likely her attorney. The lead investigator, a compact man with graying temples, turned as we approached. "You Archer Zane?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "You're the one who submitted the original footage and garage incident report." I nodded. He extended a folder. "We've cross-referenced your evidence with municipal zoning violations and financial records. The trench rerouting qualifies as unlawful modification of protected environmental infrastructure. That's a Class C felony under county code." Harmony's attorney stepped forward. "My client was not informed of the drainage system's designation. She acted under the assumption that she forged the soil analysis," he interrupted. "The lab she cited doesn't exist, and the permit number she submitted belongs to a dog kennel in Chattanooga." The color drained from Harmony's face. The investigator turned to me. "We've submitted a full complaint to the county. Your home is within the projected flood zone. You'll be contacted for a structural evaluation." "I'll cooperate," I said. "Whatever you need." Within 48 hours, Harmony's property was taped off. City engineers confirmed the trench had already caused minor erosion along the rear sidewalks of 4 homes, including Theo's. A temporary retaining wall was installed. Harmony herself was placed under house arrest pending trial. But the most surreal moment came 2 days later when I was called to testify in court. The hearing was held in a small, no-nonsense courtroom downtown. The judge, a woman with a voice like a bandsaw, made it clear early on she had no patience for theatrics. Harmony's defense tried to downplay the surveillance devices, calling them experimental monitoring tools. That line fell apart when the Dodge Cybercrime Unit presented a full download of the captured audio files, hundreds of hours of private conversations, all cataloged and time-stamped. When my turn came to take the stand, the prosecutor asked one question. "Why did you originally install the security cameras in your garage?" I answered plainly. "Because I didn't trust the HOA. Turned out I was right." The courtroom stayed silent. Even Harmony didn't look up. The judge recessed for an hour, then returned with a verdict. Guilty on all counts: criminal trespass, financial fraud, illegal surveillance, misuse of municipal land, and obstruction of environmental infrastructure. Harmony was sentenced to 6 years in state prison, with no possibility of parole before serving 2. Marcus and Sheeler received lesser sentences after cooperating fully. The court ordered the HOA to be placed under third-party management for a minimum of 5 years. All improperly issued fines were refunded. Homeowners who suffered damages from the trench were awarded compensation from the HOA's reserve fund, which had to be replenished through special city grants, not resident dues. 3 weeks after the sentencing, the neighborhood met again, not in the clubhouse, but in the park. The temporary fencing around the receded zone had been removed, and city workers had restored the original drainage layout. Kids ran through sprinklers while Theo grilled burgers. I stood near the picnic tables, a cold soda in my hand, watching as the new volunteer committee members handed out flyers about the next election. Leela had agreed to serve as treasurer reluctantly, but firmly. Theo was mentoring 2 younger residents on how to handle bylaw revisions. People came up to thank me, shake my hand, ask how the firehouse was doing. I wasn't used to the attention, but I appreciated it. Not because I wanted recognition, but because it meant they weren't afraid anymore. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the grass, Theo came to stand beside me. "You ever think you'd take down a criminal enterprise with a garage door and a deadbolt?" I laughed once. "Never even crossed my mind." "You changed this place," he said. "For the better." I looked out over the park, over the families, the laughter, the ease that had returned. "Yeah," I said, "but I didn't do it alone." He nodded, then passed me a paper plate stacked with ribs. "No one ever does." We ate in silence, the kind that's earned after a long fight. And that night, when I pulled into my driveway, I parked the Silverado in the garage, closed the door behind me, and finally slept with both eyes closed.